Hi, folks. Welcome back. You know, Democrats keep proving that facts are purely negotiable and accountability is an antique because we have people like Zohran Mamdani, the newly elected communist mayor of New York, getting asked the simplest question on earth. How do you pay for all the free stuff that you promised if the governor won't raise taxes? And his answer is basically, look, the important thing is that we pretend it's paid for. Don't burden me with a how, just go along. It's like watching a guy buy a Ferrari with imaginary credit and then yelling at the dealer for checking his wallet. And speaking of crooks, there's no bigger one than Gavin Newsom, who now claims California wasn't involved in monitoring the fires that became the deadly Palisades fire. While photos exist of the state monitoring the fires, Democrats are so deep into denial, apparently, they're starting to treat evidence like it's a conspiracy theory.
On Monday, the state reportedly told the court that nobody from the state was inside the Lockman burn scar talking with firefighters in the days leading up to the Palisades fire. But these photos and videos prove them wrong. It shows that the state may have lied in court.
Of course.
Wow. That's burnt right down to that little bush right there.
In this video obtained exclusively by News Nation, you very clearly see a state parks representative talking with firefighters on January 1st where the Lockman fire had burned.
You can still see smoke.
Photos appear to show the same thing.
Everything smells like burnt wood.
The Lockman fire had been set by an alleged arsonist the night before these images were taken. Underground embers from that fire reignited 6 days later, starting the more devastating Palisades fire, killing 12 people.
Holy shit, I've never seen anything like this in my life.
Governor Newsom initially said the state was all over it, that he pre-deployed 110 trucks to Southern California. Later, his Cal Fire admitted they did not pre-deploy a single truck to the Palisades. And recently, his office tried to distance him from the fire, telling us, quote, "The state didn't start this fire. That was an arsonist. And the state wasn't responsible for responding to or monitoring this fire."
Prison. That's all I got to say, folks. Prison. Gavin Newsom may be workshopping a presidential run, but at this point, he should be workshopping a legal defense. And no, I'm not literally throwing him in a cell on site. Due process does matter, but what we're watching here is the latest chapter in a long pattern of political leaders who treat the truth as optional and public safety as a PR inconvenience. Gavin's shifting narrative on the Palisades fire, first bragging about pre-deployed resources, then admitting none were sent out, then claiming the state wasn't involved in monitoring the burn scar while photos show the complete opposite, isn't just hypocrisy, it's a symptom of a deeper cultural and political rot. We built a system where the political class can rewrite reality in real time, confident the media ecosystem will either soften the blow or just move on. That's how you end up with a governor arguing the state wasn't responsible for monitoring a fire that literally reignited and killed 12 people, even as evidence clearly contradicts him. And the broader story isn't just about one lie, it's about an institutional mindset on the Democrat side that prioritizes narrative over accountability, optics over competence, manages crises by editing the story instead of fixing the system. This moment tells us where California governance currently is, trapped between bureaucratic arrogance and ideological insulation, with real people paying a very real price, while leadership pretending that none of the problems and the evidence actually exist. And this sort of behavior is clearly pathological on the left. I mean, you have people, they're thought leaders like Sam Harris, going around and blaming Trump for Charlie Kirk's assassination.
What you didn't have left of center were prominent people with big platforms, prominent media figures or, to say nothing of political figures like, from Obama on down, say anything but this was horrible and we should never let it come to this in American politics, right? Like there's no party left of center, real party for political assassination. And yet right of center, very prominent people from the president and Elon down treated it like the first shot fired in the Civil War. Totally irresponsible, totally dishonest. These people were arsonists pretending to be firefighters. I mean, Elon jumped on X within minutes before Kirk was declared dead, certainly before his killer was caught, and said the left is the party of murder. Right. And then I think some hours later he said, if they won't leave us in peace, there's nothing to do but fight or die. Right. I mean, to 225 million people. Right. So to have the richest guy in the world on the most politically important social media platform in the world say this sort of thing is just, it's beyond reckless. I mean, it's just sociopathic. He is just flinging matches into a landscape that has been just soaked in gasoline. And the soaking has been done mostly by Trump and Trumpism and just what's, the grifters right of center like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. And
it's so interesting how people on the left, like Sam Harris, will literally twist themselves into pretzels to avoid even 5 seconds of accountability, doing intellectual somersaults to pin violence that their side is perpetuating on the side that is receiving the violence. These people are so utterly dishonest, it's actually insane. Highlight every positive on their side, highlight every negative on the other. And suddenly the entire country is supposed to believe all political hatred is a one-way street coming exclusively from the right. When will Democrats be capable of taking any sort of accountability? Are they really this allergic to it? Be a grown adult, man. Be a man. Come on. Because we can all see what actually happened. The shooter's bullets literally had left-wing rhetoric written on them. It said kill fascist, catch fascist, or whatever it was. The exact language the left has mainstreamed for years. Which side is calling the other fascist again? And you want to blame that on Trump and Trumpism? What are you, retarded? Harris talks with this cadence of intelligence and philosophical sophistication, but everything he's saying here is objectively retarded. And the biggest story is how this move, this reflex to blame their opponents for the consequences of their own escalation, is built into the modern left's political psychology. It's a worldview sustained by moral immunity, a belief that their rage is righteous, their violence is protest, and their opponents' reactions are what's actually truly dangerous. This isn't just bias. It's a cultural operating system that allows elites like Harris to rewrite cause and effect, deny the ideological climate they created themselves, and frame any pushback as extremism. Because admitting responsibility would crack the entire narrative they've built around themselves and their movement. And the reason why they need to build something like that is because the Democrats are the party of crooks. And there's no greater example of that than literally every single one of their elected officials, starting out with this lady who was recently caught stealing $5 million from FEMA.
I also wanted to ask you about the investigation into your families, but this is also part of her congressional duties. Congresswoman, you're under investigation for the congressional ethics for violation of campaign finances. Congresswoman, this is your district. You have to answer to these people. Congresswoman.
Attorneys for her family's healthcare company aren't answering the I-Team's questions either. And the Department of Emergency Management says they won't comment on ongoing litigation, leaving taxpayers and her constituents wondering what happened to those millions.
Arrest the whole party at this point. That's honestly how it feels watching this play out. The Democrats have become so synonymous with corruption that cases like Sheila Cherphillis McCormick's don't even surprise anyone anymore. They're just the latest chapter in a political culture that keeps robbing Americans blind while pretending to champion equity. These people are awful, folks. They don't care about you. They care about enriching themselves, full stop. And no, I'm not talking about persecuting normal, hardworking Democrats. If you're an honest person, you keep your job, you keep your freedom, you stay in the process. But when you're talking about the Pelosi-style machine or schemes like this one, where $5 million in FEMA disaster relief funds were allegedly siphoned off, laundered through multiple accounts, spent on personal luxuries, and even routed into a congressional campaign, that's exactly the kind of behavior that belongs nowhere near government. It's corruption 101. And the fact that she can just walk through her district smiling, refusing to answer basic questions while police step in to block reporters who have every right to ask what happened to those millions, that tells you everything about the culture of impunity Democrats have built for themselves. This isn't just one bad actor, by the way. It's a system that protects its own, shields misconduct, and treats taxpayers like an endless ATM. That's what has to be rooted out if the country is going to function anymore. And like I said, this hits every level of the Democrat Party. At the U.S. House of Representatives, Jasmine Crockett has just been doing backflips and somersaults to defend her friend, Stacey Plaskett, who was recently implicated in the Epstein files after she was exposed for talking to Jeffrey and soliciting information long after Jeffrey had been convicted of several very serious crimes.
You mentioned Lee Zeldin there. He's now a cabinet secretary. He responded and said it was actually Dr. Jeffrey Epstein, who's a doctor that doesn't have any relation to the convicted sex trafficker. Unfortunate for that doctor, but that is who donated to a prior campaign of his. Do you want to correct the record on the people that you
Listen, I never said that it was that Jeffrey Epstein. Just so that people understand, when you make a donation, your picture is not there. And because they decided to spring this on us in real time, I wanted the Republicans to think about what could potentially happen, because I knew that they didn't even try to go through the FEC. So my team, what they did is they Googled. And that is specifically why I said a Jeffrey Epstein. Unlike Republicans, I at least don't go out and just tell lies.
You're literally admitting to it. What are you talking about?
Fine. But when Lee Zeldin had something to say, all he had to say was it was a Jeffrey Epstein. He admitted that he did receive donations from a Jeffrey Epstein, so at least I wasn't trying to mislead people. Now, have I dug in to find out who this doctor is? I have not. So I will trust and take what he says, is that it wasn't that Jeffrey Epstein, but I was not attempting to mislead anybody. I literally had maybe 20 minutes before I had to do that debate.
Yeah, but people might see that and say, well, you're trying to make it sound like he took money from
I did not know.
A registered sex offender.
No, but I literally did not know. When you search FEC files,
so do your research.
I had my team to
dummy.
do. I texted them and I said, listen, we're going up. They are saying that she took donations.
Right, but someone might say, well, your team should have done the homework to make sure it wasn't the convicted sex trafficker.
Within 20 minutes, you could not find that out, not from just doing a quick
okay, so don't say it.
On FEC.
Simple.
So, number one, I made sure that I was clear that it was a Jeffrey Epstein, but I never said that it was specifically that Jeffrey Epstein, because I knew that we would need more time to really dig in.
The level of dishonesty here is actually insane, because when you list someone alongside a laundry list of people who took money from the actual Jeffrey Epstein without clarifying it's a totally different person, the implication is purely intentional. You want the audience to walk away believing Lee Zeldin took money from the convicted pedophile. It doesn't matter how many semantic games she tries to play. Her goal was to smear Lee Zeldin with an association she knew she couldn't verify. So why even bring it up if it's not the same man? The other Jeffrey Epstein is just some doctor with a misfortune of sharing a name. He has nothing to do with any of this. But like with everything in the modern Democrat Party, the ends justify the means. She's not going to apologize. She's not going to retract it. She's going to dance around it, blame her staff, and claim she only had 20 minutes, as if that somehow excuses pushing an unverified accusation on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. If you don't have verification, you don't say it. Especially when the claim is designed to falsely link a political opponent to one of the most notorious criminals in recent American history. But this is the culture Democrats have built, folks. Narrative first, truth later, if ever. It's not about evidence. It's about protecting their friends and punishing their enemies at any cost. And this whole episode shows exactly how deeply that mindset has infected Democrat politics.
He decided to text her. Stacey didn't initiate that chain. Jeffrey initiated that chain, and she took the information. Just like if somebody texts me.
Yeah, but she was responding and saying, you know, what are you talking about? Quick, I'm up next. And then her questions were about Rona. But do you think that was inappropriate? I mean, would you text with someone who is a registered sex offender about what you should ask?
I honestly know that he had never been convicted of any federal crimes at that time.
But he had been in jail already.
Yeah.
He had been in jail. And my deal is this. The Republicans are constantly texting with a 34-count convicted felon. So if it's okay for them to text him at any point in time,
false equivalence,
then I'm not going to say that that's right or wrong, especially to the extent that you're talking about kicking someone off their committee. Were they sexting? Was it a matter of her being involved in the pedophilia? No, it was nothing like that. She was trying to understand.
And the excuses keep coming, folks. For months, Democrats have pushed this narrative that anyone who so much as breathed the same air as Jeffrey Epstein decades ago, including Trump, must be implicated in Jeffrey's crimes. They'll post photos from 30 or 40 years ago, scream, "Gotcha!" and build entire conspiracy webs off a handshake at a charity event. But now that one of their own was literally texting the actual Jeffrey Epstein just a few years ago, not decades, not ancient history, but 5 or 6 years ago, suddenly it's all, context. Professional reasons. She didn't start the conversation. And every other excuse under the sun. And let's be clear, she didn't just receive the text, she kept engaging. She could have ignored them, but she didn't. Yet the new standard from Democrats is basically, unless she was actively colluding with him or sexting him, there's no issue. Really? That's the bar now? Because that's definitely not the bar they set for Republicans. They shifted the goalposts the moment the hypocrisy landed on their lap. This is the deeper problem, folks. A political culture on the left that weaponizes accusations when it's convenient, then rewrites the rules when the spotlight hits their side. It's not about ethics, it's not about standards, it's about tribal protection. And every time they do this, every time they twist logic to shield their own, it erodes trust, not just in them, but in the entire political system.
Someone who traveled this country as it relates to the election, I think that one of the things we've not done a really good job is communicating our wins, right? So a lot of times Democrats, their goal, their job is to get in there, put their heads down and make sure that they do the work.
What work are you doing?
Going around and doing the propaganda side of things, right?
Democrats have done zero work. There's nothing to show for the years they've held power, and it's honestly incredible hearing Jasmine Crockett try to spin this fantasy where Democrats are just too busy working to focus on propaganda. What work? What bill? What measurable improvement in the lives of your constituents have you actually made? Outside of self-aggrandizing appearances and cable news theatrics, there is literally nothing she can point to. And that's the real story here, folks. The modern Democrat Party has built an entire political identity on rhetoric rather than actual results. They govern through narrative, not accomplishment. And the moment their narrative collapses, they pivot to claiming they're victims of poor messaging rather than failed leadership. This isn't just Jasmine Crockett being ridiculous, by the way. It's a window into a broader political culture that substitutes talking points for competence and congratulates itself for effort it never actually put in. And until voters stop rewarding performance over productivity, we're going to keep seeing this cycle of empty claims, no results, and politicians who confuse airtime with actual achievement repeat itself over and over and over again. Vote these fools out. Because at this point, folks, they've been so thoroughly exposed that allowing these guys to maintain office is just willful societal suicide at this point. And there's no greater example of that. The suicide vest in New York strapped to its own chest, now confessing that he has no funding mechanism for any of the free stuff he promised.
You're talking about fast and free buses and you're meeting with the governor. I've heard you talk about many times that you don't want to take money away from the MTA. You want to put money back in. It's something that she agrees with, right? We don't want to take away money from the MTA. How are you getting that money, the $700 million to make the buses free, into the MTA if she's not for raising taxes?
You know, I think that the two clearest ways to raise that money is through the raising of the state's corporate tax to match that of New Jersey. I think that a lot of this is still a case to be made. Whether it's the corporate tax or whether it's the personal income tax on those who make more than $1 million a year or more, I think that these are the clearest ways. I've also said that if there are other ways to raise this funding, the most important fact is that we fund it, not the question of how we do it, but that we do it.
Well, that sounds like absolutist language if I've ever heard it. Mamdani is basically saying, we're going to fund this by any means necessary, as if the details, legality, and economic consequences are completely irrelevant. What do you mean? The most important fact isn't how you fund it, only that you do. That's not policy making. That's a political blank check. And it's coming from the same man who just weeks ago floated the idea of stripping landlords of their property if they didn't comply with city directives. This is how authoritarianism takes root. Not with boots and bayonets, but with elected officials who decide the ends justify any means they personally deem necessary. By the way, in the same interview, Mamdani talks about an eviction moratorium, a rent freeze, fast and free buses, and universal child care, every one of them requiring massive ongoing revenue streams he doesn't have and can't raise without the governor's approval. Yeah, he shrugs off the constraints as if they're optional. And the irony is that he may actually get the power to do it. The Rent Guidelines Board in New York has 9 members, and almost all of them can be replaced immediately. The chairman at any time, 2 members with terms expiring during his first term, and 6 whose terms have already expired. That means a single mayoral reshuffle could hand him the board he wants, letting him freeze rents and reshape the housing market in New York on ideological grounds. So when Mamdani says the most important fact is that the government does the thing, not how it does it, he's revealing the deeper philosophy driving this new wave of Democrat politics. Process doesn't matter. Legal limits don't matter. Economic sustainability doesn't matter. Who cares? Throw that out the window. Only the outcome they've pre-selected matters. And that is exactly how a constitutional republic shifts into something far more coercive and authoritarian. This is the end game, folks, and I don't even like saying it, but that's where we are, a genuine tipping point where the decisions we make in the next few years will determine whether America remains a free society or becomes something unrecognizable to our children and grandchildren. And I'm not talking about the kind of change that expands opportunity. I'm talking about a political project on the Democrat side that's intentionally building a less free, more controlled, more economically scarce nation, where a self-appointed elite manages scarcity, dictates economic outcomes, and slowly consolidates every major institutional lever of power. That's the trajectory if we allow the radicals in politics to keep steering this ship. And the only way to push back is with the tools that built this nation in the first place. Faith in Christ is our moral compass. Conviction in the Constitution is a guardrail of a free society. And loyalty to the country, the flag, and the countless Americans who bled and sacrificed to hand us liberties the rest of the world still dreams of. We owe it to them. Not just the dead, but the living veterans who carried the burden of defending the Stars and Stripes. This is beyond an ordinary political dispute, folks. It's a civilizational crossroads. The same authoritarian tendencies we once fought abroad are being smuggled into our institutions at home. And if we stay passive, they will hollow out everything that makes America exceptional. As Christians, we're commanded to be slow to anger, but firm in the defense of truth and justice. And every time a war has been thrust upon us, we're the ones who finish it. This cultural and political struggle is no different. We're going to meet it with courage, conviction, and an unshakable commitment to preserving the country God entrusted us. You tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.